Living through a global pandemic has had an unfortunate habit of putting the systems we previously took for granted into a sudden stark focus. And while we may not have paid attention to something like our supply chain until it was put through unprecedented strain, adapting and continually improving such an important infrastructure has had an immeasurable effect on our quality of life.
The beginning in containerization, it was putting trailers onto basically a barge. Then it evolved into, by today's standards, really small ships with a handful of containers. And that was a big move upward from break bulk shipping. Initial container ships, full container ships, were at the time considered to be huge, 2,000 20-foot equivalent containers on a ship. Ships that are working at this terminal here today, ships that exist in the world, are over 20,000 TEUs, right? I mean, massively large ships moving huge amounts of cargo, and the efficiency gain associated with that has been massive. One of the components in the supply chain many people never even thought about was a chassis. The chassis is a frame, the tires. Containers come off the container ship, they land on a chassis, and that's the way it gets transported to the customer, to the rail ramp, to a distribution center. It's the vehicle for making that happen. And if you go back over a decade ago, it was part and parcel with the offering of a shipping company. You made a container available to your customer, it came with a chassis, nobody thought about it. Over the span of a decade or so, that space has evolved. The ownership of those assets has moved from the container operators into the hands of equipment leasing companies. And because of congestion, many of them are sitting underneath containers, loaded, sitting at distribution centers. They cannot be unloaded because the warehouse is full.
We went to a curbside model for the first 45 days of the pandemic, and with that, we saw our volumes drop drastically, and our e-com went up. So our biggest challenges were, okay, how do we fulfill these orders and deliver to the house? After 45 days, we reopened our stores for in-store shopping, and with that, our volumes increased tremendously above what the volume and the capacity that we had. So we had to go out and try and source additional chassis, and that was one of the biggest challenges we had.
What we're seeing happening now is an investment away from some of the assets. So we've seen quality improve through just R&D on that front. And what we're seeing begin to take place is an availability of technology. And this technology is going to allow us to better monitor the overall health of our chassis, whether we have lights out in a chassis to make it more reliable, brake wear and tear, tire pressure monitoring, and a level of investment that has really become a lot more available in the last 5 years than we've ever seen in the industry so far.